welcome to Elvenhome, and to this month's episode. As you can see from the opening credits, Sharky's End is now firmly fixed on the layout and indeed has started receiving passenger trains. As I said I would do, I completed the scenic work from the corner there all the way up to the station. The station is firmly fixed in. I think you can see the scrub grass that's underneath the platform, just to break that up a bit. And the ballasting has been completed up to the point, but not beyond it at the moment, because until I put the bridge in, I will be putting a new section of track in there as a single piece. And at that point, I will complete the ballasting. The wall now is completed up to the abutment and the ledge on which the bridge will sit. And the bridge is sitting pretty much directly underneath that ledge. And it's there because of a section at the end of the video when I show you the plans for High Elven, the revised plans for High Elven, and that comes right at the end of the video. This video is slightly different to how I originally intended. About a year ago I started thinking that I wanted to build a war memorial to go onto the layout at Elvenhome, and in doing that I started filming the process of building the war memorial, meaning it to be a video in its own right, released at or around the 11th of November. But the building process and the filming for it I thought would make actually quite a dull single video. So what I've decided to do is to release the sections of the video, many of which are already recorded, over the next few episodes of Elvenhome as we come up towards the 11th of November. So the next section you'll see is going to be me talking as if this was going to be a video in its own right, and that will probably be true of a number of the sections over the coming videos. After that, I'll then talk to you a bit about the plans for High Elven in the light of the comments I received before, and that will pretty much top off the video for this episode. So sit back and enjoy me in my confusion as I was trying to work out how I was going to build a war memorial. As many of you will know, this year marks the 100th anniversary of the armistice that brought to an end the fighting in the Great War, the First World War, from 1914 to 1918. And I wanted to do something on Elvenhome to commemorate both the event and the men and women who died during that war. And so I thought, in any event, that Elvenhome would have a war memorial. Everywhere after the Great War of any size had a war memorial. And what I had in mind originally was to use this, which is a Langley Models kit. It's a lovely little kit in N-gauge. Most of the things in N-gauge, because of the size, are fairly small. They tend to be crosses or possibly a small monument with a wreath. But I rather have always liked those monuments which have a Tommy with his arms reversed in homage, standing guard over a vigil over dead comrades. But this seemed not very sufficient for me. I'll try and limit, if I put just to give you an idea of scale, if I put there we go, that's a knife blade in, so it's quite a small little thing. If I put them side by side, you can get an idea of scale. And I was sort of casting around for what sorts of things I might want. I've been thinking about it for quite a while. In November of last year, as a consequence of some genealogical research that I've been doing, I went and visited the military cemetery at a tap. And what I'm going to do now is put up a live stream that I did on Facebook, because I was so taken, if that's the right word, by the cemetery. A tap in the First World War was where the British military hospitals were. There are a number of them, and men were evacuated from the front line. So a great many men and women, because there are men and women in this cemetery, died. And this is the largest cemetery in France. There are bigger places which have memorials to more people where they didn't have a grave. And there are 10,500 men and women of the First World War buried in this cemetery, including my great-grandfather, which was the reason why I went to a tap and actually visited his grave on the 100th anniversary of his death in November 1917. As you will have seen in the early part of that clip, there was in all of these big cemeteries there is a monumental building. That one by Edward Lutyens, and many of them are the same. Lutyens also designed the cenotaph. And I had in mind something for Elvenhome, but I couldn't quite find the right thing until I happened, again clicking away on Google Images, to come across this image, which is of a memorial in Leicester, which is on a monumental scale. I sort of had in my mind an idea of a kind of Arc de Triomphe shape, but I wasn't sure, how many places outside of the centre of London would have had monumental memorials to those in the First World War. So what I'm intending to do, and what this video is going to follow me doing, is to try and build something that will go over this model of the Tommy, because what I have in my head is that the Tommy sits surrounded by a large structure which itself sits on a raised platform with a border in the centre of a square with posts with chains between them to mark the boundary of the border, and with the ability to walk up to the monument from each of the four sides of the square. And at the moment in my mind, but again I've got to see whether it all fits on the layout, this is going to be positioned right outside the station, where they cleared an area specifically to put this monument up to the Great War. And by the time we are going to get to see it, of course, it will also have had recently inscribed on it the dates for the 1939-45 conflict, which for the time that I'm modelling is very recent memory indeed, no more than 3 to 10 years after the cessation of war. So let me show you where I've got to so far. I'll just remove Tommy, excuse me. I'm using 0.5mm strip styrene or styrene to do this, and this is where we are at the moment. Now the reason I'm doing this video now is that I'd originally intended this to be entirely a prototype, but as it's beginning to go together, it is just possible this may actually be the model. And rather than get to the end and discover that I hadn't recorded anything, I thought I would show you it now. So you can get the idea of the model. It's just constructed by cutting pieces of styrene, which comes in a sheet, obviously. So that gives you the main arch, which is obviously the main way of coming, and similarly 2 arches from the other side. At the moment, all I've done is put the 4 cross walls in. That gives me my arches in from this side, and obviously the front and the back. You'll see that there's bits of card inside to give it more rigidity, and it is quite rigid. It needs a bit more up here. And what's happening now is my brain is cudgelling. The intention is that on the top here there will be a raised area which is slightly smaller than the thing overall, which will have 4 windows, and the windows I have just purchased from York Model Making, which if I can show you here, they do these in various sizes. Sorry, I need to get them out of the packet. Let's get one out of the packet, I'll be able to see it then. And I've got the ones which are 8mm holes, so excuse me, let's get it the right way around. That's the right, no, that's the right round. Hold on. That's the right round. The hole in the centre is 8mm. Obviously, it's then got a border around it, and this is going to sit in a raised area there, and obviously one there, one there, one there, to provide light that will come in and down onto the soldier. And the whole idea is that the soldier sits there in the centre, and can be seen if I come back a little bit. There we go. It can be seen from all four sides. So that's what's in my mind at the moment. The next thing that I think I want to do is to work out how I'm going to fill this area here. As you'll see, this is quite thin card, and if you look underneath, I can't just leave that as the wall. This is a great big stone building, and if that was the thickness of the wall, it would implode on itself. So what I'm thinking of doing at the moment, and I'm just trying to work out how to do it precisely, is to put just up above the arch here a square piece of card to go in there with a hole in it, a big hole, probably about 3/4 of an inch diameter, and similarly around the top here to provide a light well that will go up to where the light is coming in from the thing at the top, and I just need to get my head around how I'm going to do that. I've also got to work out how to fill these walls. I think this card might bend to go in there, and so it would just be cutting a strip long enough to take it around there and filling it in. But I'm not entirely sure whether it will bend nicely around that around the top of the arch. So that may be that I'll do it in two halves, actually, thinking about it. So this is just the start of the video, and what I'm going to do is probably come back in a few weeks' time, because this has been in my head for over a year. This bit has been done in the last week or so, and I'm now talking to you in August, and what I need to crack how I'm going to fill that space there. I've got one or two ideas in my mind of how I might do that, but I don't want to say anything until I've got something more concrete. So next time I speak to you, I'll tell you how much time has elapsed, and we'll see where this has got to from there. Speak to you again in a while. If you cast your mind back to the video of the 3rd of August, I showed you this track plan, which was the piece of work that I had to do to enable me to begin to position things, to be able to put Sharky's end station in its place and complete the work up to the bridge abutment onto which the bowstring bridge, which you can just see in the top corner, will sit. I had a number of very useful comments. Very grateful to David Auger, to Ewan, whose YouTube channel is named The Growler, Michael Hemfrey, RWS Baden, and Doug Park Junction. Both of the latter two are called Rich, so that's why I've used their full names. Pointing out various things, suggesting various things to think about, possibly swapping the station with the goods area, whether there was enough space in that top left corner, suggesting using curved points to get away from the kind of squareness of everything. And two in particular raised the point of whether in the area where the platform will sit, which is here, which is intended to be a run-round loop, whether with two coaches sat in that loop, the engine would be able to make the crossing with enough clearance. And in my very literal way, I'd measured that distance to be precisely the length of an engine and two coaches. And the problem with that is that it wouldn't give clearance, because it would biff the coaches either on the way through or as it came off at the top end. So taking all those things together, I spent quite a time revising the plans. I'm now up to version 5, which is the one that I think I'm content with. One of the things I was trying to avoid, which you can see happens with this plan, if I just zoom you in for a moment, excuse me, in that top corner where I had two left-hand points, the first one is fine, it's clear of the running lines below, and so I can stick a point motor there, knowing that it won't foul the trains running below it. The next one sits right above the running lines, and although I think I do have enough clearance to put a point motor below the points, I want to try and avoid that if at all I can, because one never knows when something might go through there that's just a bit taller, or a wire drops down and disaster will strike. And each time I revised the plan, I came up with something that looked good until I printed it out and put it on the layout and saw the disasters that I would have created by doing them. So what I'm about to show you, just going to reposition you so you can see all the various bits, is the version 5 of the plan, which is the one that I think I'm going with. I've lived with it for a couple of days, and it's not made me think I need to do any major change, although doing this filming has just made me reflect on one thing on which I'd be interested in views, which I'll mention in just a minute. As you can see in the top corner, again I'll zoom you back in the top corner there's a curved point that takes the line as it comes off the bridge. The left hand turnout going down into the station where there's a return loop and the main platform for the station, and that distance now is long enough that I'll be able to take the train. The train will come in and actually the engine will stop over the points or just before them to make sure that there's enough space each end of the B-set coaches for the train to pass by. And obviously I can adjust that when I actually build this thing to make sure that that distance works. At the moment, this then goes down into the engine shed, which is just a little single engine shed. In fact, we can put the real thing on. There we go. Look, hurrah! Which will sit there. My only thought about that is whether that makes sense, or whether just to have that as a head shunt essentially, and move the engine shed to be on one of these two sidings. One of the things I decided when I did this layout is that I was building too big a goods facility. This is a country station which has a goods facility to allow local produce to be taken down to Weathertop. It's not a major goods yard. And I'm not going to have rakes of 15 or 20 wagons coming into this facility to be shunted and moved around. And therefore I really only need two sidings of moderate length to enable small rakes of coaches to be formed, ready to be able to take trains out as engines arrive. But I'd be interested in views there. I think the goods shed where it is okay, but I could equally just take out one of the sidings so that I would have the goods facility itself where wagons would be loaded and unloaded, and then a siding in which they would wait, or trains would be formed waiting for a train to come and pick them up and take them away. And I've also managed on this one to give myself right in the top there, as you can see out at the top curved point, there's a section of track which will allow some shunting to take place without fouling the main running line, because I don't think you would want great loads of wagons being shunted all the way back to Sharky's End to be able to be moved forward. The goods shed, a question was raised about whether there was enough space for the goods shed and where it was facing. Well, firstly, by using the curve point and the other changes, I've brought the goods shed down into the area more. I've also changed, rather than just using a single block, coloured block to represent the goods shed, the individual elements that make up the goods shed, and that is set on so that the through running shed is where the line goes through, and then on the other side of that obviously is where goods are received. To the right of that is the platform, which extends the length of the area that can go up to the goods wagons, and to the left of that is the little office. I think I've got that right. Right is the platform, left is the office. So I think once I make that kit up, that's exactly what it will look like. And I've now given myself much more room to be able to bring a goods handling facility or something for traffic to move in and out. But remembering this is N gauge, and as I discovered when I did Greyhaven's station, the area in front of Greyhaven station I thought was quite small until I finished. But actually it's really very big. I mean, you could put a fleet of cars into that, much more than would probably ever go into it. So I think there's more than enough room there now for me to do some scenic work, bringing the hillside down and then a road coming through that, using in the way that I have with Grey Haven, so the road sort of emerges rather than it actually coming through or from anywhere in particular. So that's my plan now. The only slight question mark, which wasn't in my mind until I started filming this, is whether the engine shed position really works. I think it probably does, but if it doesn't, I think I might well go with taking out one of the sidings to turn it into where the engine shed will be sited. So that's this part of the video, and I think that pretty much wraps up the video for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and in particular the start of the build of the War Memorial, which I've really been enjoying doing that. And obviously I'm a lot further forward than you've seen so far. As I said at the start, what I'll be doing is releasing the various bits of the vid that I've recorded over the next few weeks as we get closer to the 11th of November. If you've liked the video, please do like, it all helps, and please feel free to share the video, and please do let me have your comments. As you'll have heard, the comments that I had have helped me get to this version of the plan, and there's lots of things on the layout where people have suggested things to me which have been of immense help in the building of the layout. If you haven't subscribed and you'd like to subscribe, please do, and hit the bell notification so that you can be advised when I upload. But till I speak to you again in a couple of weeks' time, that's it from me. Bye-bye.